I never, th- I never thought I'd end up in a place like this. My home office, with its cozy chair, laptop, and endless mugs of tea, was my safe haven. The thought of working in a corporate office, especially under Felix Williams, made my stomach twist into knots. But apparently, my best friend Lily Stone thought I needed a little push. A push that involved sending my resume to the Williams Group without asking me. Accidentally, she claimed. Sure, Lily, totally accidental. I stared at the confirmation email with a mix of horror and disbelief. And now, here I was, standing in the sleek, glass-and-chrome lobby of Felix Williams' empire. My oversized sweater and jeans screamed, I'd rather be home. But I had no choice. Lily's little prank had dragged me into this nightmare. Then I saw him. Felix Williams, tall, perfect, terrifying. His presence alone seemed to suck the warmth out of the room. People were whispering and stealing glances, but I could only focus on him. Lina Addams. His voice was sharp, cutting straight through the office chatter. Yes, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Don't panic, just don't panic. He studied me like I was a puzzle he might not bother to solve. You know this is a full-time position, right? Not a hobby. Yes, sir, I replied, resisting the urge to roll my eyes. Who even says sir anymore? He nodded once, then tossed me my first task. Make me a coffee. Coffee, that was it. A simple, everyday task. But somehow I managed to make it look like a crime scene. Grounds spilled, the machine gurgled, and I almost set a paper towel on fire. Great first impression. I think I should be fired, I muttered under my breath, imagining texting Lily, I hate you so much. Felix didn't flinch. He leaned back, steepling his fingers, and said, I don't fire people for spilling coffee. I fire people for not doing their job. Stick around and you'll see the difference. I blinked at him, caught off guard. Somehow he wasn't yelling, he wasn't angry, he was calm, too calm. Maybe this job wouldn't be completely awful. Or maybe Felix Williams was just a different kind of disaster I was about to be trapped in. I never thought I'd actually work in an office. My home setup, laptop, cozy chair, endless mugs of tea, was perfect. And now, here I was, standing in the gleaming lobby of the Williams Group, wondering how one small, accidental email from Lily Stone could ruin my life. And there he was, Felix Williams, tall, impeccably dressed, and looking like he could stare you into a corner and make you apologize for breathing too loudly. Lina Addams. His voice was sharp, cold, and entirely judgmental. Yes, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Just don't faint, don't faint. You know this is a full-time position, right? Not a hobby. Yes, sir, I muttered, resisting the urge to roll my eyes. Sir, really. Then he handed me my first task. Make me a coffee. Coffee, simple, easy, totally doable. Except apparently, my brain had other plans. I fumbled with the machine like it was a bomb. Coffee grounds spilled onto the counter. The water tank gurgled ominously. I even managed to knock over a stack of Felix's designer notebooks. I think I should be fired, I admitted, looking up at him with pleading eyes. Please just let me go home. Felix didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. I don't fire people for spilling coffee. My previous secretary got too focused on making the perfect coffee and ignored actual work. You're chaos. That's a good thing. I blinked. A good thing. Somehow my disaster was a selling point. Then chaos struck in full force. I realized mid-step that one of my shoes was missing. Great, just great. I tried to pretend it wasn't a big deal as I limped awkwardly toward the elevator, but Felix didn't miss a beat. A few minutes later, he appeared holding a pair of ridiculously soft, panda-themed slippers. PR company sent these. Thought you might need them, he said, raising an eyebrow. I stared at the slippers, pandas. Thanks, I managed, slipping them on. My toes immediately sighed in relief. The office carpet was heaven beneath them. Felix smirked slightly, as if he'd won some invisible battle. Try not to lose these. I wanted to groan, but instead I laughed. Of course I would lose a shoe on my first day. Of course. And somehow I had the sinking feeling this was only the beginning. Between my clumsiness, Felix's intimidating presence, and whatever chaotic plans Lily had accidentally, or not so accidentally, set in motion, my first day was shaping up to be an absolute disaster. But at least my feet were comfy. I barely had time to admire the softness of my new panda slippers before Felix gave me the next, important task. "Check the email inbox," he said. Simple enough, right? Except the inbox looked like a digital hurricane had hit it. Hundreds of unread messages, flagged notes, and one email with the subject, "Urgent, don't open." Naturally, I opened it immediately. A cascade of work instructions tumbled out. Client complaints, budget reports, event schedules. I tried to keep up, typing furiously, clicking links, and attempting to understand corporate jargon that sounded like it belonged in a science experiment. And then chaos struck again. My chair wobbled on a loose wheel. I grabbed the desk for balance, knocking over a cup of pens. They scattered across the floor like tiny, plastic soldiers fleeing battle. "Are you okay?" Felix's calm, slightly amused voice cut through the mess. I froze. Am I okay? I just destroyed his office supplies. Am I even qualified to breathe this air? Yes," I said, desperately trying to gather the pens while avoiding eye contact. "You're fast," he said. "Messy but fast, keep it up." I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a polite warning that my life was about to be chaos-shaped forever. Then came lunch. I tried to sneak out to grab a sandwich, thinking maybe I could hide from further disasters. Nope. Felix had somehow tracked my escape route. "Lunch is here," he said, sliding a perfectly wrapped bento onto my desk. "Eat, then answer these emails." I opened it and stared. Sushi. Fancy, meticulously arranged sushi. I couldn't even remember the last time I had sushi, or that I liked sushi. My stomach growled anyway. Halfway through, a coworker peeked around my cubicle. "Hey, are those panda slippers yours?" she whispered. I froze. Yes." "She's wearing the CEO's slippers," another coworker muttered across the hall. And that, my friends, was how the first rumor started. By 11:30 a.m., half the office had decided Lina Addams was Felix Williams' personal quirky assistant, and maybe more. I nearly choked on a piece of sushi. By 3 p.m., I had managed to answer most emails, spilled coffee on one client contract, and accidentally forwarded Felix's private notes to the wrong inbox. Somehow, Felix didn't yell once. He just watched, occasionally raising an eyebrow, like he was studying a rare, unpredictable animal. At 5 p.m., I slumped in my chair, exhausted but oddly exhilarated. Somehow, in just one day, I had survived Felix Williams' office, and even gained a pair of panda slippers that made me feel like a hero. This is going to be interesting, I thought, slipping my feet under the desk and glaring at the looming mountain of unread emails. By late afternoon, I was convinced I had survived the apocalypse. Emails answered mostly correctly, office supplies mostly intact, and my panda slippers still on my feet. I was starting to feel competent. Then Felix appeared behind me, like a shadow that somehow smelled faintly of expensive cologne. "Lina," he said, and I jumped. He wasn't angry, no, that would have been easy. He was just watching, intently. "Yes," I croaked, pretending I wasn't secretly hoping he'd leave me alone. "Report on the client meeting," he said, leaning casually against my desk. He didn't lean in the flirty way movies make CEOs do. He just leaned, making me hyper-aware of the fact that he was tall, broad-shouldered, and terrifyingly close. I scrambled for my notes, shoving papers in the wrong order. "Yes, sir, the meeting went well. The client seemed happy, mostly, I think." Felix's lips twitched, almost like a smile. Almost. "Mostly," he prompted, raising a brow. I swallowed. Well, there were a few issues, but nothing major. Totally manageable, maybe. He gave a slow nod, still watching. And then, just like that, he turned and walked away. My shoulders slumped. I survived again. Barely. But of course, survival in Felix's office came with consequences. A little later, I tripped over the corner of a rug while carrying a stack of papers. The stack went flying like confetti, landing over Felix's desk and scattering across the floor. He appeared instantly, always faster than seems humanly possible, and calmly picked up a single sheet. "You know," he said, handing it to me, "chaos isn't a crime, it's a talent." I stared at him. Talent? He had officially lost his mind. And yet, I couldn't stop noticing the way his dark eyes followed me, the faint lift of his brow when I fumbled, the slight pause when he handed me that sheet, as if he was evaluating me. I shook my head. "Focus, Lina. Don't get distracted by the terrifyingly attractive CEO who might be studying you like a lab rat." By the time I finally logged off, I was a mess. Hair everywhere, panda slippers slightly scuffed, eyes a little wide from constant near disasters. But beneath the exhaustion, there was a weird thrill. Maybe surviving Felix Williams. Office isn't just about work, I thought. Maybe it's about surviving him. And just like that, I realized I might be in way over my head. The next morning, I was determined to survive my second day without incident. Panda slippers on, coffee in hand, my own. "Thank you very much." I marched into the office and immediately collided with a rolling chair. Felix was already at his desk, looking impossibly calm and annoyingly perfect. But then I noticed something new, tiny cameras installed around the office. My stomach sank. Oh no, he's watching me. Apparently, chaos wasn't just tolerated, it was studied. Felix didn't even need to say a word. Just a tilt of his head, and I felt like a lab rat in a very high-end lab. I had to focus, had to impress, or at least not completely embarrass myself. Cue, the first office assignment from hell. Felix handed me a folder labeled urgent. Choose the right candidate. I opened it to find a portfolio of male models, all of them ridiculously attractive, and all of them apparently available for Felix's projects. "Pick one," he said casually. "I need someone reliable, someone discreet." I blinked. Pick one. Like a boyfriend, or an employee, or a disaster waiting to happen. Felix didn't wait for an answer. He simply walked away, leaving me staring at glossy photos of men who looked like they had stepped out of a magazine cover, while my brain screamed, "This is not normal. Not normal at all." By mid-afternoon, chaos escalated further. A delivery person brought in a giant box of promotional items, which I promptly tripped over. Panda slippers saved me again, but I still managed to knock over a stack of coffee mugs. Somehow, they didn't break. I was miraculously lucky, or maybe Felix was subtly enjoying my disaster. Later, while trying to file some papers, I overheard coworkers whispering. Apparently, the panda slippers incident had already become the talk of the office. Some claimed I had a secret connection to Felix. Others suggested I was the CEO's quirky new muse. I wanted to scream. "No, I just lost a shoe, okay." By the time I left for the day, I realized a few things. One, panda slippers were life-saving. Second, Felix Williams might be observing me way more than necessary. Third, somehow, in spite of the chaos, I was why enjoying it. And somewhere deep down, I knew. This job was going to be a wild ride, and I was already hooked. I wasn't sure what I had signed up for when Felix told me we were going to dinner with the male models from his company. Assessing their reliability, he made it sound like a casual business meeting. In reality, it felt like an audition for a dating show I hadn't agreed to join. The restaurant was sleek, expensive, and smelled faintly of arrogance and expensive perfume. Each model introduced themselves with a smile that screamed, "I know I'm ridiculously attractive." Most of them spent the evening talking about protein shakes, workout routines, and social media followers. I struggled not to roll my eyes. Seriously, is this my life now? Sitting across from people who care more about their abs than their jobs. And then I saw him, Liam R. Quiet, black-haired, leaning lazily back in his chair, barely engaging in the conversation. No dramatic stories, no posing for the waiter, he just existed. And somehow that made him instantly stand out. Lazy, not competing, perfect. I decided on a whim to invent a backstory. "Liam loves Chinese culture," I told Felix casually. He's actually planning to move to China soon to study art and traditional calligraphy. Felix's eyes lit up. Really? He asked, clearly pleased. I tried not to smirk. Of course he'd fall for a well-crafted story. Classic Felix. Yes, I added confidently. He's very dedicated to cultural pursuits. Felix leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Good, this could work. I suppressed a laugh. I can't believe this actually worked. By the end of the week, I was exhausted. Emails, errands, coffee disasters, and constant Felix supervision had me plotting my escape. I attempted to resign, not once, not twice, but multiple times. Each time, Felix calmly refused, giving me reasons that made it almost impossible to say no. And then Paris. Fashion Week, Felix announced casually one afternoon, sliding an envelope across my desk. You're coming. I blinked. Pardon. You heard me. Paris, Fashion Week, business trip, you'll enjoy it. Inside the envelope was a boarding pass and my Psyduck Crocs. Cleaned, polished, and somehow restored. My long-lost, ridiculously childish favorite shoes. Somehow he'd found them. I couldn't even argue. I was officially trapped. Paris was a whirlwind. Lights, cameras, designers yelling in French, and models strutting with effortless grace. And then disaster struck. Liam, my carefully chosen model, was delayed, held up by some dramatic woman who clearly had opinions about everything. Panic set in. The show could not wait. I looked at Felix, who was standing there in his sharp suit, looking way too calm for someone about to be dragged into a disaster. We need you on stage, I blurted, grabbing his arm. What? Felix raised a brow. Just trust me. Step in, model, please, now. And that's how Felix Williams, CEO, impossibly perfect human, ended up strutting down a Paris runway in borrowed designer clothes, looking awkward yet somehow magnetic. The crowd loved it. I almost fainted from relief, shock, and the sheer absurdity of it all. By the time Liam arrived, the show was saved, and Felix gave me a look that was part amused, part impressed, and part don't ever drag me into this again. I think I was officially in over my head. The show had ended, the lights dimmed, and the crowd cheered, or maybe they were cheering at me for not completely ruining everything. Either way, I let myself breathe until chaos struck again. A wealthy socialite, clearly mistaking Felix for a professional model rather than the CEO of an international company, tried to buy him. Literally. She cornered him backstage, speaking fast in French, waving her credit card like it was a wand. Lina, Felix muttered, looking mildly bewildered. Handle this. Handle this? I was barely handling the fact that I had dragged him onto a runway 5 minutes ago. Liam is actually available, I blurted, pointing vaguely toward my carefully selected model. The socialite gasped, grabbed Liam, and stormed off in a swirl of scandal and perfume. Felix just stared at me. You did that. I shrugged sheepishly. Crisis management, Paris style. He didn't yell. He didn't even scold me. Instead, he smirked faintly, the infuriatingly calm smirk that somehow made my heart skip a beat. And that's when it happened. Felix collapsed. Okay, maybe. Collapsed is dramatic. He didn't faint entirely, but he staggered, clutching his chest and muttering something about exhaustion. Oh no, I panicked, rushing to his side. Felix, are you okay? I think I need. He started, then groaned. Within minutes, I had half the backstage crew helping me shepherd him to his hotel. By the time we arrived at his mansion, I was convinced I had signed up for a full-time caretaker role. Inside, I met Uncle Red, his butler, who eyed me suspiciously. So, you're dadding him. I froze. What? No, definitely not. Uncle Red raised an eyebrow. MMH, sure, that's what they all say. I sighed. Great. Even the staff thinks I'm in this romance circus. Felix, meanwhile, slumped dramatically onto his couch, groaning. I survive a runway, Paris socialites, and a diva model, and you just stare at me. I'm observing, I said weakly, which was true. I was observing him like a very exhausted cat trying to figure out why the human was lying on the floor. He glanced at me, that smirk tugging at his lips. You know, you're surprisingly useful in crises. I nearly choked. Surprisingly useful. That sounded dangerously close to praise. And somewhere deep down, I realized, surviving Felix Williams might be impossible. But maybe, just maybe, I was starting to enjoy the chaos. I thought surviving Felix collapsing in Paris was peak chaos. I was so wrong. Back in the office, just as I was starting to catch my breath, the door slammed open with a force that rattled my panda slippers. And in walked his mother. Mrs. Reed, or as I quickly dubbed her in my head, the chaotic matriarch, was all sharp heels, sharper opinions, and the kind of presence that made everyone in the room freeze. She gave me a long, appraising look, like I was some insect that had dared to crawl across her expensive Persian rug. "So, you're the one," she said, voice dripping with condescension. Yes," I offered cautiously. Her eyes narrowed. "I hear you're seeing my son." I blinked. "What? No, absolutely not." She smirked knowingly. "Really, because the staff seems to think you are, and the office gossip," her lips curled into a dangerous smile, "is relentless." I gulped. "Of course it is." Then she did the unthinkable. She tried to bribe me, not subtly. "I could make your life easier, wealthier, maybe even encourage you to leave my son alone." I stared at her. "You're trying to bribe me." She arched an eyebrow. "Call it maternal intervention." I realized I couldn't just panic, so I did the only thing I could think of. I subtly flexed my own wealth. "Funny you mention that," I said, tilting my head. "I've been doing online poker. I'm not exactly struggling financially." Her jaw dropped. "You what?" "Yeah, big wins. I could, if I wanted, buy a small yacht right now," I added casually, trying to look unconcerned. She froze, clearly not expecting me to fight back with online poker. Meanwhile, Felix appeared from behind his office door, arms crossed, smirking faintly. "Mom, are you finished?" Mrs. Reed looked like she'd just been caught in a blizzard. Well, maybe." Felix waved a hand dismissively. "Go, the grown-ups are talking." I nearly fell over in relief. This is my life now. Surviving Felix, his mother, and whatever absurdity comes next. And just to make things worse, or better, depending on perspective, the office rumors were at full throttle. Apparently, people had already decided Felix and I were a power couple in the making. The whispers, the stares, the side comments, it was everywhere. I groaned. I just want to survive this job, but somehow I think I'm hooked. And Felix, well, Felix just leaned back in his chair, that smirk tugging at his lips, clearly enjoying every second of the chaos he'd created. "Yeah," I realized, wiping imaginary sweat from my forehead. "I'm officially in deep trouble." By mid-morning, the office had officially turned into a circus. Rumors about me and Felix weren't just whispers anymore. They were full-blown speculations. People peeked from behind cubicles, smirked in the hallway, and openly commented on the CEO and his quirky assistant. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But when the intern whispered, "I heard they're practically married," I nearly choked on my coffee. And then Felix appeared. Calm, imposing, and way too close. My heart did that annoying flip-flop thing. Why did he have to smell faintly of coffee and expensive cologne at the same time? "Lina," he said, voice low, cutting through the office chatter. "Come to my office." I obeyed, pretending not to notice the way his gaze lingered on me. Inside, he closed the door behind me. Silence. Tense, heavy, slightly terrifying silence. "I hear the rumors are spreading," he said, leaning against his desk, arms crossed. His eyes weren't angry, no, worse. They were curious, amused, studying. They're wrong," I stammered, trying not to stare at the sharp line of his jaw. "Completely wrong." Felix smirked. "Are they? Or are they exactly what you're pretending they are?" My stomach flipped. I'm just focusing on work," I said, heat creeping into my cheeks. He stepped closer, casually leaning over the desk so that our faces were barely a foot apart. "Work," he echoed, a faint teasing note in his voice. "Really?" I swallowed. "Yes, work." He said, studying me for a beat longer than necessary. And then, just when I thought I might melt into the floor, he straightened and nodded. Good, I like focus. And yet, before I could step back, he reached out and lightly tapped the panda slippers on my feet. Also, these are adorable. I blinked. Thanks, I guess. He smirked that infuriating, perfect smirk again. Keep them on. They suit you. My heart thudded obnoxiously in my chest. He said, suit me. I was not used to CEOs or anyone saying things like that, not to mention standing that close in that voice with that look. I cleared my throat, forcing myself to step back. I should get back to work, I mumbled, trying not to trip over the slippers. Do that, he said casually, though the faint curve of his lips suggested he enjoyed watching me squirm. As I left, I realized something terrifying. Surviving Felix Williams was no longer just about doing my job. It was about not falling for him while he quietly drove me crazy. And judging by the smirk he gave me as I exited, I had a feeling he knew exactly how close I was to tipping over. By midweek, the office had officially descended into absolute chaos. Whispers followed me everywhere. Coffee breaks became mini interrogations. Did you see Felix with Lina yesterday? Are they dating? Maybe she's moving into his penthouse. I tried to focus on my work, but every time I passed a cubicle, someone would snicker or nudge a coworker in my direction. I just want to survive my job in peace, I thought desperately. And of course, Felix made no effort to help. Lina, he said, appearing seemingly from thin air as I filed a pile of client reports. His voice was calm, deceptively casual. Come with me. I followed, bracing for some lecture or bizarre assignment. He closed the office door behind us, cutting the world off completely. And then he leaned against the desk. That smirk, those eyes. My stomach immediately forgot all pretense of calm. The rumors, he said slowly, are amusing. I blinked. Amusing. Yes, he continued, stepping closer. Some of them are inaccurate, some are not inaccurate. I swallowed hard. You mean? He leaned in, voice dropping slightly so that I could feel the heat radiating off him. You're saying it's complicated. I tried to look composed. Exactly, complicated. He smirked again, circling my personal space like a predator, or maybe a very amused CEO. Good, complication suits you. I froze. Did he just compliment me in the weirdest, most infuriating way possible? Before I could respond, a loud crash from the next office over reminded me why I existed here. Chaos. Papers flew, a coffee mug shattered, and I was immediately on alert. Felix, however, didn't move, just gave me a faintly mocking glance. You're enjoying this, he said, voice low, a teasing undertone I couldn't ignore. I flushed. Enjoying what? I asked, trying to sound innocent while my heart raced. This, he said, stepping a fraction closer so our shoulders almost touched. The chaos, you, the mess of it all. I wanted to die, or laugh, maybe both. Maybe, I admitted, trying to sound casual while failing spectacularly. Felix's smirk softened for just a second, enough to make my knees feel like jelly. Careful, Lina, he said, voice dropping to a teasing whisper. The more you pretend to handle this chaos, the more you might actually like it. I blinked. Heat crept up my neck, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I might actually like it. No, absolutely not, it's just survival. But the way he was looking at me, half amused, half serious, made it hard to remember that. And somewhere deep down, I realized, Felix Williams wasn't just my boss. He was a walking, infuriating, utterly distracting disaster. And I was dangerously. Undeniably, it started like any other day. Chaotic emails, spilled coffee, and whispered rumors that seemed to follow me wherever I went. I was mid-sip of a lukewarm latte when Felix's voice cut through the office like a knife. Lina, my office now. I froze. My brain scrambled for a rational explanation. Did I break something? Did I misplace a client report? Was someone plotting an actual coup while I wasn't looking? By the time I stepped into his office, he was already leaning casually against his desk. Calm, composed, dangerous. Sit, he said. I did, and then he didn't speak. He didn't give me a task. He didn't even glance at the laptop open on his desk. He just looked. 5 minutes. 5 long, painfully intense minutes. He stared. I stared back, desperately trying not to flinch. My palms were sweaty. My heart was hammering. I could practically hear my own blood rushing in my ears. Then, out of nowhere, he reached into his drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. My eyes widened. Oh no, what now? He opened it. Inside was a delicate necklace. Simple, elegant, and completely unexpected. "This," he said casually, almost like he was commenting on the weather, "suits you." I blinked. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. My cheeks betrayed me immediately, flushing pink. Thank you," I stammered, feeling like I was melting into the chair. He gave me one last look, half amused, half unreadable, and then without another word he walked out, just like that, off to his meeting, leaving me completely alone. I sat there, stunned, necklace in hand, heart racing, and a blush spreading across my face. Did that just happen? Yes, it had. Felix Williams, CEO, chaos incarnate, master of making my life impossible, had summoned me, stared at me like I was some prized work of art, and casually gifted me a necklace. I could barely breathe. I could barely think. And somewhere deep down, I realized I might actually be falling for this man. By the time I made it back to my desk, my brain was doing somersaults. Necklace in hand, heart still racing, I felt like a cartoon character whose head had literally exploded. And then I noticed the looks. The whispers had already started. She got a necklace from Felix. Did he just stare at her for 5 minutes? I knew it. I knew something was happening. I buried my face in my hands, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me whole. I didn't even want the necklace. It wasn't the necklace. It was him. The way he had looked at me, calm, controlled, yet somehow piercing. "Lina, you okay?" a coworker whispered, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "Yes, totally, fine," I said, waving my hands like a maniac. "Just reorganizing my files." I was clearly lying, and everyone knew it. I tried to focus on work, typing reports and answering emails, but my thoughts kept wandering. The memory of Felix casually gifting me the necklace, the smirk on his lips, the slow, deliberate way he had walked out, it replayed on an endless loop in my head. Every time I caught sight of him across the office, my stomach fluttered. And of course, he knew exactly what he was doing. Because when he looked my way, that faint smirk returned, calm, infuriating, teasing, and my heart skipped a beat. By the end of the day, the office rumor mill had officially exploded. Half the staff was convinced I was Felix's new obsession. The other half was whispering about a slow-burn romance in the making. I could practically hear the collective sighs and speculative chatter as I walked past desks. I tried to shake it off. Just survive this day, that's all. But as I sat at my desk that evening, twisting the delicate chain of the necklace between my fingers, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just surviving Felix Williams anymore. I was wanting more. And that thought made me blush harder than the office gossip ever could. The office felt heavier than usual that morning, like the air itself was conspiring against me. And of course, Felix made his entrance at exactly the wrong moment. "Lina," he said, voice low, leaning against the doorway of my office. That smirk again, the one that made my brain short-circuit. "I need your opinion on something." I froze. Sure," I managed, trying to sound casual while my heart decided to run a marathon inside my chest. He leaned closer, just enough that I could feel the faint scent of his cologne, mingled with coffee. "Do you think this tie matches my suit?" He tilted his head, as if it were life or death. Yes, it looks great," I said, blinking rapidly. Why was my voice suddenly squeaky? Felix raised a brow, amused. "Great, that's all I get, no critique." I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it again. Why did he have to stand so close? Why did my brain insist on noticing every little detail about him? He stepped back slightly, giving me just enough space to breathe, but not enough to stop my heart from hammering. "You know," he said casually, You're surprisingly entertaining to have around." "Entertaining," I repeated, heat creeping up my neck. I try." Felix smirked. "Oh, you do more than try. Chaos, wit, unexpected cleverness, and somehow you survive it all." I couldn't help it. I laughed nervously. "Well, someone has to keep you on your toes, right?" He leaned just slightly closer, voice dropping into that teasing, infuriating tone that made my stomach do flips. "Careful, Lina. You keep surviving and I might start enjoying it." I froze, enjoying what exactly? My clumsiness, my constant near disasters, or me? My ears burned, my hands twitched. My heart, oh my heart, decided to betray me completely. Wait, am I liking him? It hit me like a ton of bricks. The late nights, the chaotic tasks, the absurd gifts, the ridiculous situations I'd survived only because of him. I liked him. And not in a small, fleeting way. Felix noticed the change immediately, of course. That smirk deepened, and he tilted his head just slightly, eyes glinting with amusement and something else I couldn't name. "Interesting," he said, voice low. "I think you just realized something about yourself." I gulped, wishing I could vanish under my desk. I don't know what you mean," I mumbled, twisting the necklace around my fingers. He leaned back casually, giving me just enough space to breathe but not enough to escape his presence. "Sure you don't," he said, smirk never leaving his face. "But I think we both know better." And in that moment, I knew it was true. I liked him. I liked him more than I should. And somehow, just somehow, I had the sinking feeling Felix Williams, infuriating, maddening, impossible Felix, liked that fact. The office was a disaster. Papers stacked like mini skyscrapers, a coffee machine that had somehow exploded on the counter, and half the staff whispering behind their hands like the world's nosiest paparazzi. And of course, Felix Williams was at the center of it all, calm, composed, infuriatingly attractive. "Lina," he said, appearing beside my desk like a shadow. His voice was low, teasing, and made my stomach do backflips. "You're juggling emails, printers, and a full-scale office meltdown. Impressive." I blinked. Thanks," I mumbled, fumbling with a stack of papers that immediately toppled over in a spectacular domino effect. Felix didn't flinch. He just crouched slightly to help me pick them up, his fingers brushing mine. A shock of warmth ran through me, and my cheeks betrayed me instantly, flushing pink. "You're messy," he said casually, handing me the last sheet, "but somehow charming." "Charming," I repeated, heat climbing my neck. I'm just..." He leaned closer, that teasing smirk curling on his lips. "Just what?" I froze, words caught in my throat. My heart was pounding, my brain short-circuiting, and the office chaos suddenly felt like a blurry background to the real disaster. Felix standing dangerously close. And then he tilted his head slightly, eyes glinting with amusement. "You're flustered." I'm not." I tried to deny it, but my voice cracked. My hands fumbled, knocking over another pile of papers. "Lina," he said softly, crouching again to help me, fingers brushing mine once more. "It's okay. You're adorable when you lose control." I couldn't take it. The heat, the chaos, the near-constant teasing, it was too much. My chest tightened, and for the first time I let it all out. Tears spilled over, unbidden, warm and fast, while my panda slippers shifted awkwardly on the floor. Felix froze. Not in alarm. He just watched me calm, as if waiting. I like you," I admitted through shaky breaths, words tumbling out before I could stop them. I like you so much it hurts, and I buried my face in my hands, trying to stop crying. Felix crouched beside me, tone softening. "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to hide it. I've been enjoying this too. Watching you, teasing you, secretly hoping you'd feel the same." I peeked through my fingers. His smirk had softened into something different, something that made my heart hammer even harder. The office was still a mess. Papers everywhere, coffee mugs teetering on the edge of desks, and whispers buzzing like bees, but none of it mattered. All I could think about was Felix, and how he had just spent the last hour leaning against my desk, smirking like he owned not just the office, but me. "Lina," he said suddenly, voice low, carrying that dangerous mix of amusement and something deeper. My stomach immediately did flips. Stop hiding behind all that chaos. Just look at me. I blinked, frozen. Aye. He stepped closer, closing the tiny gap between us, so that the chatter of the office and the falling papers became background noise. I like you, he said, calm, almost teasing, but there was no mistaking the sincerity in his eyes. I blinked. You like me. My voice wavered, high-pitched and ridiculous, but I didn't care. Yes, he admitted, smirk softening into something almost tender. More than I should. More than I probably even realize sometimes, but yes. I like you, Lina. You're infuriating, chaotic, clever, and I can't stop thinking about you. My heart skipped a beat. My hands trembled. I couldn't breathe. And then, because apparently the universe had decided to be mercilessly dramatic, he closed the last few inches between us. Felix, I whispered, barely able to form the words. I've been wanting to do this, he murmured. And then, suddenly, impossibly, his lips were on mine. It wasn't a soft, tentative kiss. It was warm, confident, and entirely overwhelming. My knees nearly buckled. My hands shot up to his shoulders, clutching at him like I might vanish if I let go. The world faded. The chaotic office, the spilled papers, the gossiping coworkers, all of it disappeared. There was only him and me. And the undeniable spark that had been building for weeks. When we finally broke apart, my cheeks were flaming, and my heart was hammering so loudly I was sure everyone in the office could hear it. Felix smirked, that perfect, maddening smirk. See, chaos isn't always bad, he teased, brushing a stray hair from my face. I blinked, utterly dazed. No, it's perfect, I whispered, voice trembling, though whether from relief, shock, or excitement, I wasn't sure. Felix's eyes softened, and for the first time, the teasing smirk was replaced with a look that made my stomach melt entirely. Perfect, he agreed. And just like that, the office chaos didn't seem quite so terrifying anymore. Not when Felix Williams, and somehow, unbelievably, I was right here. The office was officially on fire, figuratively, of course. Rumors about me and Felix had reached peak intensity. Whispers turned into open comments, coffee breaks into full-blown interrogations. She's his girlfriend. They kissed. Did you see the necklace? I tried to hide my blushing, but it was hopeless. Especially since Felix, that infuriating, perfect, maddening Felix, was casually leaning against my desk, watching the chaos unfold like a king surveying his kingdom. Lina, he said, voice low and teasing, I think the office is officially aware we're involved. I groaned. Felix, they're going to talk for weeks. He smirked, placing a hand lightly on mine. Let them talk, let them whisper, I don't care, as long as I have you. My heart nearly exploded. You really mean that? He leaned closer, eyes locking on mine. I've meant it for weeks. You're chaotic, clever, infuriating, and somehow perfect for me. I don't want anyone else but you. I blinked, heat rushed to my cheeks. Felix, my voice faltered. I wanted to say something brilliant, something witty, but all that came out was a soft, I like you too. He smiled, that infuriating, utterly perfect smile, and tugged me gently closer. Good, because I'm not letting you go. And then, of course, he kissed me again, this time slower, softer, full of warmth and certainty. The office may have been chaos, the rumors unstoppable, but in that moment none of it mattered. When we finally pulled apart, Felix rested his forehead against mine. See, chaos isn't always bad, he whispered, voice gentle. I laughed softly, heart full. No, it's perfect. The days that followed were a blur of work, laughter, and subtle, but unmistakable flirtation. The office continued to gossip, of course, but Felix and I didn't care. We had survived chaos, deadlines, runaway coffee machines, Paris Fashion Week disasters, and countless ridiculous situations. And somehow, through it all, we had each other. One evening, as the office emptied and the city lights twinkled outside the window, Felix turned to me, holding my hand. Ready to go home? I smiled, leaning into him. Always. And as we walked out of the office, side by side, I realized something. Life with Felix Williams was unpredictable, chaotic, and utterly maddening. But it was also perfect. And for the first time, I was excited, not terrified, to see what came next.